speaking to the Colombian president. Well, Leonardo Goy is a political analyst based in Bogotá who's worked for several international think tanks focusing on post-conflict development, security studies and the impact of conflict on Colombia's domestic policies. We were talking to our correspondent, Wira Davis, about how unexpected this was. You're right on the scene, and it really was a shock.
Yeah, it really was, especially considering the fact that on September 22nd, that is the day when the FARC delegation, when Timochenko and Santos signed the official peace treaty, a survey was released, and the survey said that about 66% of Colombians were going to vote yes. So it is very shocking, but I would argue that the No campaign managed to win this referendum for a number of reasons, perhaps chiefly the fact that people just associated the idea of voting no in the referendum as a way to pass a vote of no confidence on Santos's government. So people just associated the idea that voting no in the referendum would have been a way to get rid of Santos from the president. And also perhaps the fact that people did not really appreciate this triumphal discourse which the FARC embraced as a result of the negotiations. The FARC pretty much championed this discourse whereby signing the peace treaty was a way for them to win a war, and people did not really appreciate that. And last but not least, the fact that former President Álvaro Uribe, who's been a promoter and a chief supporter of the No campaign, managed to detach the No campaign from the idea that voting no in the referendum was pretty much a way to support war, and managed to promote the discourse whereby voting no in the referendum was just a way to call for a different peace and, well, arguably more just terms for a future agreement with the FARC.
So following the results, the president's come out and said, OK, the truce will continue. We're going to have more negotiations. What's going to happen next? Are we going to see a different deal struck?
Well, this is a very difficult question to answer. If you had asked me that question last week, as we've just heard, Santos had no plan B, and neither did the FARC. Now, this is very reassuring. Perhaps the only silver lining about tonight is the fact that both Santos and Timochenko, FARC supreme leader, do seem to be very happy pursuing peace, independently of the results of the referendum. Now, it might be the case that we will be seeing a new coalescence of different voices of Colombia's political spectrum, and it might be the case that the new treaty will be negotiated through a separate body, perhaps an assembly, that will include the voices of other opposing factors, chiefly Álvaro Uribe's opposition party, the Centro Democrático. Now, this is very much up to Uribe to decide, so everything will just depend on the willingness of Uribe and the dissenting voices of Colombia's political spectrum to sit down together with the government and quite possibly with the FARC to renegotiate the terms of a new possible agreement.
And just very briefly, if you would, how damaging is this to President Santos?
It is a massive blow. I mean, like I said to you before, one of the reasons why perhaps this referendum did not go through is the fact that people just do not seem to approve of the president very much. And one of the latest surveys on the president's approval rate said that only 36% of Colombians did approve of the president's administration. So the key question, I guess, to ask is not so much whether Santos or Timochenko or Uribe are willing to sit down and renegotiate the terms of any agreement, but whether Santos has the political capital necessary to convince its support bases to renegotiate the terms. This will, of course, be something that we'll be seeing in the next few weeks and months.
Political analyst from Bogotá, Leonardo Goy, thank you.
Thank you.
The Hungarian Prime Minister has claimed victory after voters overwhelmingly rejected